Love podcasts, hate nonsense. It's the PoliticsJOE podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, right. Let's cut the crap. Is Kashmir Indian or Pakistani? Spot check. No, imagine.
Occupied Kashmir.
Occupied Kashmir. By who?
Who's to say?
Who's to say? If you're coming to us for
There's
that.
a lot of people that have a lot of opinions on that.
Absolutely. Great people on all sides. I'm here with Modi fan Sean Hickey.
Hello.
And Pakistan enthusiast Laura Beveridge.
Hello.
That's what I associate you guys in my head as.
And you are the colonial
overseer
that's put the border there in the first place.
I'm sort of Rudyard Kipling in this. I'm Ed Campbell, by the way, if you're a first time listener or viewer. Do you think we get them?
First timers.
Yeah,
of course. We're always growing.
Great. Good to keep that optimism. We haven't hit our ceiling at all. What are PMQs?
Yeah. What PMQs? What did you think of it?
I thought Starmer was getting an absolute kicking.
Yeah.
I think he's getting an absolute
like it.
shooting. Jesus Christ. Someone had the Weetabix, and it was Kemi Badenoch
I
today.
thought she was a lot better than she usually is today.
Oh.
It felt like she actually, for once, was in tune with where the British public is at on these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd agree. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I think Kemi was a lot better than she has been. Ed Davey, I think, for the first time had like some kind of wrath from Keir Starmer. I think Keir Starmer's just getting fed up with having to listen to the Lib Dems at this point. You're basically the same as us. Like, the last couple of weeks he's just been getting more and more agitated by Ed Davey's questions, and I think today he was just completely fed up with it. The rest of it, yeah.
Shall we dive into a clip?
Mr. Speaker, the only black hole is the one the Prime Minister is digging. This issue affects some of the poorest and most vulnerable pensioners. His mayor in Doncaster says it's wrong. His First Minister in Wales says it's wrong. Even his own MPs are saying it's wrong. He's refused to listen to me on this. Will he at least listen to his own party and change course?
That was a real Ed Campbell cut on a PMQs clip there, wasn't it?
Why?
I was expecting to see more.
It was a short question.
It was a short question, yeah.
So maybe your beef is with Kemi Badenoch rather than the clipper.
That's true. Sometimes I'd like to hear what Keir Starmer has to say afterwards.
Well, this is
No,
kind
Sid.
of more an admin discussion.
You're really going to enjoy clip number 4, Sean.
Excellent. Kemi Badenoch doing the sensible route, I would say, and not picking a fight about something online that no one cares about, going after the wildly unpopular winter fuel payments, and then in the context of Labour taking an absolute shooing in the local elections. Why do we think she did this? Was it effective?
I think a lot of people on the Labour benches will have been in agreement with Kemi Badenoch during Prime Minister's questions. I mean, John McDonnell was writing in The Guardian condemning Starmer, saying that these local elections need to be a wake-up call. We saw the same thing from former Transport Secretary Louise Haigh. The Labour Red Wall Group, which is a group of 45 Labour MPs that represent industrial communities in the north of England, said that that Keir Starmer's government needs to break away from Treasury orthodox and invest.
There was some polling that More in Common did that said that 60% of Brits would think better of the government if they reversed the decision on the winter fuel payment. And if you think about people who vote for reform, 75% of them would back a full U-turn on this policy, which I think is interesting when you consider the way people talk about going after the reform votes. They are mostly talking in terms of culture war, in terms of immigration, things like that, unwoking the Labour Party. But actually, if you simply stopped pensioners freezing to death, then maybe reform would vote for you.
I think. Sorry.
The elderly are probably one of the ripest for the picking when it comes to Labour going to reform, considering the things that Starmer's doing to the elderly. I think on the question itself, like the response to most questions that Starmer's been getting today was to just criticize the Conservatives for something that they did a year ago. And I think people watching PMQs are slowly, I certainly am. I have been for a long time. Just getting fucking fed up with him whinging about what they did.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do something yourself. Like you're just continuing on what they did rather than saying, well, I'm doing, like, you can't say, I'm continuing the work that you did and you're the reason why I'm doing that. It's like holding a gun to your head and saying, you forced me to do this. I'm going to shoot myself. And it's your fault.
There was a great moment where, actually, it's been a big week for India. Bloody hell, war with Pakistan, trade deal with the UK. What a banner week.
See, at the beginning of PMQs as well, and he's like, we're deeply concerned about the ongoing border crisis in India and Pakistan. I'm also delighted to announce that we've just done a couple of £1 billion worth of trade with India.
Doing the good news about India or the bad news about India. But there was a great moment where he seemed to suggest that India would not have engaged in a trade deal with the UK had there not been a cut to the winter fuel payment.
Yeah.
There was like, oh, sensible. The adults are in the room once again.
I think it's interesting, the winter fuel and how much cut through it's had. 'Cause
Yeah.
the More in Common polling, they also polled which Labour incidents have had the most cut through with the public. And winter fuel was so far ahead of everything else that's happened in the Labour government. Almost 90% of Brits that they polled knew about it, and it was overwhelmingly negative. Do you know what the second incident with the most cut through has been from the Labour government?
Is it a policy or is it like an event?
It's both.
Oh, interesting.
The budget.
Wasn't the budget?
Is it...
What's a policy and an event?
The state, whatever it is for Trump?
It was the prisoners' release. The day when...
Oh,
all-
Yeah.
And it was also...
Remember that?
That was radical, wasn't it?
Yeah. And that was also overwhelmingly negative as well. And then it was the Ukraine negotiations and farmers' inheritance
Remember
tax.
when they did that?
Yeah.
When it was like, we
insane.
simply don't have enough room.
Remember all the news journalists that were outside, like,
That was
boxing
sick.
them as they were being released?
It's great. Do you remember when it was like, oh my God, young Tiz is out.
Do you want to explain who that is?
One of our friends from work, former colleague, formerly of this parish, maybe I shouldn't name him, is from,
Should we?
Should we bleep it out?
bleep his first name, bleep colleague's name, I would say.
Yes.
Sounds like, just said like a notorious, I don't know, a notorious fellow from his...
He was.
I think
He
was
wasn't
accused
in
of
prison for
torture.
torture. He was in prison for false imprisonment. He allegedly, in the false imprisonment case, he had allegedly poured a kettle of boiling water over someone's face, but that couldn't be proven because the person had something over their face when the kettle was poured over them.
And Starmer, Hugga Hoodie Starmer, let this man out. Listen, that was just, it was so funny. Our colleague was just like, what the hell did we do? But then, like, with that though, if there was literally no space in prison for the people in the riots, what could they have done, I guess?
Surely there's other people before releasing him. Surely.
Oh yeah, okay, yes,
There are other people in there.
Yes, sorry, I'm not. I don't mean. Like, can we talk about it on a macro level? I'm not talking about releasing this one individual.
You gotta release this. You gotta release this. Look at the hashtags, man. Thousands of people want this.
Oh, I saw on social media, lots of people did it. Lots of people did not want that man out. God, I forgot about that entirely. That was very early. See if he tried to do that now. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Imagine Starmer trying to release.
How
people
many
from
months in
jail.
were we then?
2? 1?
Yeah. That's an insane thing to do in the first couple of
6
months
weeks
that
in.
you're in. Yeah.
6 weeks in, you're like, oh, fuck. Like hordes pouring out.
Like, and then do the easy things like cutting PIP and winter fuel payments a couple of months down the line after that.
It is, I guess, the tactic here. Morgan McSweeney's like massive, big brain, 3D.
Brother,
chest
I'm telling you
energy.
now, every day that goes by is, I'm further convinced that Morgan McSweeney is in the Irish intelligence services.
He talks about this all the time.
I'm telling you now, I will not be surprised if it comes out years down the line that he's an op. He's trying to ruin your country.
He's trying. So they've Who? On behalf of like the Irish state.
On the Irish state, yeah.
Right.
He's trying to undermine the British state.
It's a slow burner. There are surely more. You wouldn't start because he got involved in Labour politics in his early 20s.
See
Playing the long game.
But that's a long one. That's a sleeper agent. For like,
but it was also, wasn't it Lambeth Council? He was quite a radical Labour council, especially back in his day. I don't know, man. He was also a crusty when he first moved to the UK, as far as I'm aware. I think Pat Mag and Gabriel Pogrund described him as like a dreadlocked.
Yeah, but I don't think he wasn't like particularly political. He wasn't like
no. Sure. But I think as well with the FT there was like a screenshot going around over the weekend of either the FT or somebody else was writing about.
Is that because you can't afford the FT, so you just read screenshots?
He was to be poring over the results of the locals over the weekend and had already come to the conclusion that Labour need to move further to the right. Do you?
I don't think... We gave your theory about Morgan McSweeney being an Irish spy.
I'm fascinated that you're not just leaning into it as a bit.
No, it's annoyed me. You pissed me off. There was an excellent moment towards the end of Kemi and Keir's exchange where Kemi was slagging off net zero and Starmer was like, I want you to apologise to all the net zero workers who you are saying don't have a job.
Yeah.
He was using like the language that people use quite hysterically about like veterans. About like, I want you to stand here and tell this like this person here who's done something of great valor to this country.
Yeah.
And veterans, I think, maybe have sacrificed a bit more than people who've just got a new job in the green industry.
But
I would say
in the substance of that as well, you know, the whole thing, like I think he said it in his answer that the Conservatives would keep the UK like hooked on fossil fuels had Labour not decided to make a net zero pledge. But also, remember in 2022, Keir Starmer was talking about GB Energy in a very different way that GB Energy has turned out to be in the first place. It was meant to be a publicly owned, public construction and energy implementation company. It's now an umbrella firm to give grants to companies to make wind turbines. So Labour in some way, shape or form are still kind of, given that the biggest companies in that field are people like BP and Shell, you're still giving fossil fuel giants money, sure, to make wind turbines, but they're still doing the bad shit as well, you know? I just think it's like speaking out both sides of your mouth, really.
not Starmer, not our Prime Minister.
Wouldn't be him.
Shall we have another clip?
Let's do another one.
Roll clip.
Mr. Speaker, I'm disappointed with that answer, and I will keep coming back to hold the Prime Minister to account. Mr. Speaker, people also want a government that will stand up for our country against Donald Trump. Mr. Speaker, first he came for our steelworkers and our car makers with his outrageous tariffs. Now Donald Trump is coming for our world-leading British film industry. So will the Prime Minister work with our allies in Europe and in the Commonwealth and make clear to President Trump that if he picks a fight with James Bond, Bridget Jones and Paddington Bear, he will lose?
Fuck off! Fuck off, you twee cunt. That was fucking dreadful.
This country is so weird about Paddington Bear.
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
I've
seen the first one.
I've not seen it either.
They're supposed to be good.
Is it just an English thing? Have you seen it?
I've seen one of them.
I'm not like really. I don't want to see it because everyone loses their fucking mind.
Did you see Adam White wrote about the kind of way that Paddington Bear is now like some sort of like culturally contested space for Britishness, and like described him as a cripplingly ubiquitous pseudo-political nightmare, which is Great tagline for the next movie.
Yeah, holy shit.
Because like the way that the Home Office gave him a passport is quite strange. And he referenced, do you remember the Grim Reaper meme of when the Queen
Like knocking on
when the
the
Queen
doors.
died? And then the caption was, "I've done my duties, Paddington. Please take me to my husband."
Yeah, insane. I've had it up to here with Ed Davey and his absolute fucking
He's
nonsense.
too twee.
He's too twee. I kind of, it's. I think I extend quite a lot of generosity towards him, and this is actually really less to do with his politics and more to do with
His personality.
I guess this nightmarish display that he forces on us. Stop challenging the Prime Minister to a game of FIFA. It just seems inauthentic.
Is he still doing that?
I really hope not, but I like maybe he's listening to me. This reminds me, and actually, like Starmer just seems so fed up with Ed Davey here. Because imagine, like every day, like you've become the Prime Minister, and if you're treating kind of that office with like the reverence that it deserves, like all the trappings of office, you're engaging with.
You've just had a bilat with the man leading the most populous country in the world, or one of the most populous countries in the world.
You've got to go home and you've got to work out what that country's now going to. Is that country going to war?
Yeah.
What does that mean for us? You're dealing with Donald Trump in the White House.
Mr. Prime Minister, will you protect Paddington Bear at all costs?
Shut up! Like he's. Have you ever had to like, if a friend is annoying you, and you've just had to like snap at them and be like, shut up? Like we are like. If someone's being particularly irritating, like I remember once at school, there was a boy who was kind of just like chasing a girl, and it was like odd. He thought it was a laugh.
Metaphorically chasing her, like she was running away from him.
He'd like stolen her daughter or something like that, and was kind of like nah, and it was like we were 17, like far too old to be doing
Right.
anything like that. And eventually I was like, stop
That's
it.
still how I operate.
Yeah, I'm absolute beast now. Going up to women on the tube and stealing their
things from them.
What you reading? You'll never catch me.
Seems dorky.
Changing tube lines. But that's how he behaved there. It was just like he's just lost his temper. I don't think they're friends anymore. It must be said, even if they are bonding over James Bond. Bridget Jones is a weird one as well in that pantheon of three. I don't know why.
Who should
Because
he have
she's
picked?
American. Renee Zellweger.
No,
No,
as
but
in I
Bridget
don't.
Jones is English.
Is she an icon? Like
I think so. I think for like the millennial women, Bridget Jones was
Okay.
because she's like the British Sex in the City, isn't she?
So do you think it's less that these three characters are objectively the cultural icons of Britain? It's what the Lib Dems have decided the three cultural icons are to a Lib Dem voter.
I was wondering that because I was thinking, has he left out anyone very obvious from that list? Of
Is
iconic...
James Bond Lib Dem?
no, but people like so popular that it kind of transcends everything.
But I think Bridget Jones could be like Lib Dem voter coded.
Are you arguing that Bridget Jones the character is the same voter?
Yeah.
Or
The character is like no. The character is a character that a Lib Dem voter would identify with as an interesting person. Paddington Bear, interesting character to a Lib Dem voter.
Bridget and
Is nobody coming on this journey with me?
Bridget and Paddington are both like twee coded, like very
Yeah.
twee humor. James Bond, I think, is maybe the odd one out there.
James Bond rocks. James Bond
Yeah.
is fucking sick. I just there isn't like a. Are people going to like? Where does Bridget Jones live? Notting Hill. Are they traveling to Notting Hill to like see her sick flat? Maybe they are. I'm just not aware of this as a cultural phenomenon. But there's not like an industry based off of these. Harry Potter. Surely that's a bigger
Is that
pick.
controversial now?
Oh yeah, but then
yeah.
you're overthinking it. Like at that point, you are maybe overthinking it. Like those movies are still massive, and people still watch them. Not us though.
Is it overthinking it? Yeah,
I think-
not
I
us.
think
Because we're
like
the wokest in the room.
if you're calling out Ed Davey for alluding to like one of the biggest film franchises of all time to be made in Britain, and you're calling him out for that, you are maybe misreading what the point is. For acknowledging its existence.
Yeah. Maybe we're giving too much credence to the point in the first place.
Shall we engage with the point rather than semantics?
Do you think that Ed Davey does have a point though about these tariffs that Trump is seeking to impose. Like he's seeking to impose an 100% tariff on all films produced in foreign countries like the UK because the UK gives tax breaks to filmmakers.
It's interesting because what does that mean? Like how can you tariff something that's not a physical product?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not clear.
Yeah.
It's not clear if this is actual policy.
Yeah.
As well. And also like tomorrow it'll be 200% tariffs. Just
Yeah.
kidding, 10%. Just kidding, 10%. Like saying to India, okay, you give me all your Bollywood films for free or whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's and I guess that's the difficulty of engaging with Trump on any level is like he could like has he just said this entirely flippantly and then he's going to have like he's got like his ambassadors in Hollywood for like is it Mel Gibson and like a couple of others of just meathead actors and he's going to speak to them and they'll be like this is insane. It's like this is insane.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's not serious policy. He's just looking to, I guess, bully production companies into reconsidering where they locate their filming locations.
Do you know what maybe would have been a better point for Davey to make about this?
Anything else?
Yes.
Literally anything
Literally
else.
anything else. Challenging him to a game of swing ball. Like
Going to the water park with him.
the film, like people who work in the film industry are like really struggling at the moment. There's like an astonishing statistic about people who work in film production of just like being out of work. It's like the vast majority of these people do not have work. There isn't anything getting made. People are leaving the industry. And that is something that the UK can point to and be like rightly proud of, is like our film making tradition and like that industry. And people don't, I wonder if it's because it's a creative industry, people don't talk about this as like you do like steelworkers necessarily. And we're going to talk about steelworkers in a little moment. But these people are still having their industries decimated and there is not enough support for that. So instead of Davey mooning for Paddington or whatever he was doing, like he could have made like quite a serious point about people in this country and like just losing jobs and being out of work.
Yeah. Excellent point.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Ed.
I'd like some affirmation after every single one of my points.
I think I did a film studies undergrad, and that was one of the things that turned me off wanting to work in film, was how precarious the work can be if you get it in the first place. In a country like the UK, that it is now becoming notoriously difficult to work outside of the UK. I can't imagine how difficult it would be for anybody working in that industry to continue to sustain themselves. But on Ed Davey, I think if you look at his contributions to PMQs for the last God knows how long, every single time he's spoken has included a question about Donald Trump. And I think it is a little bit engagement farmy that he's doing that, because he's the one that's guaranteed to get, well, he has 2 questions every week. Kemi Badenoch's never going to ask about Donald Trump in a critical way. And so he's doing it knowing full well that Keir Starmer isn't going to say anything of substance back. But he knows that somebody out there is going to fucking clip it and go, take a bow, Ed Davey.
Yeah.
Well done. Applause emoji.
Who's gonna do that? Well, where does this phenomenon come from?
I think it's also the Lib Dems trying to establish their niche, because beyond care and their agenda for social care reform, does anyone really know like where they stand on issues?
I think you're being generous there about people knowing about their position on care reform
Yeah.
as well. I think the vast majority of people wouldn't know who Ed Davey was, regardless of like what they actually stood for.
See who hates that point? Those fuckers.
For the audience.
Yeah. They hate that. We, for the longest time, have been calling him Lib Dem MP on YouTube. And all of the comments are like, call him by his name! He's Ed Davey!
That's good. There was some quite meta analysis of like how we title things. I would like to read that. You know, when I say like I read all the comments, I do read all the comments.
Yeah.
I'm really showing
It's
that.
really horrible for your mental health.
Oh,
but I see you descending into chaos every afternoon.
Yeah, my old flatmate. I told my old flatmate once, and he said, "Is that a good thing?" I was like, "No, obviously not." Is there anything else on Ed Davey, or should we move on to another yellow man?
Let's move on.
Have we? Excuse me. Have we picked? No, never mind. I was just checking for representative.
Who's the yellow man.
Stephen Flynn, SNP, both yellow. I was about to chastise us for only picking questions from men, but then I remembered Kemi Badenoch is a woman. So good work, everybody. Representative,
A black woman as well.
black woman.
You know.
Tick tick. We've covered all bases there. Not all bases. Definitely not all bases. And a conservative voices are welcome on Politics Joe. I've just remembered that Darren Grimes is the councillor now.
It's great fun to remember that every now and again.
When I interviewed him, he said, I was like, I didn't think you'd have a little righty like me on Politics Joe.
I don't know.
That sounded like the beginning of a sentence, Sean. Stephen Flynn, the yellow man. Let's go.
Let's look at the yellow man.
Stephen Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prior to the election, the Prime Minister promised that energy bills would come down. They continue to rise. He promised that he would save the refinery at Grangemouth. It's shut. And of course, he promised that he would unleash a generation of secure energy jobs in my city of Aberdeen. Well, today, Harbour Energy, the largest independent player in the North Sea, have announced that they are about to shed their workforce by 25%. That's 250 jobs in my constituency gone in the blink of his eye. And do you know who they blame, Mr. Speaker? They blame the policies of the Labour Party. So can I ask the Prime Minister, in fact, can I invite the Prime Minister to come to Aberdeen and explain to my constituents why he is willing to move heaven and earth to save jobs in Scunthorpe while destroying jobs in Scotland?
Oh, okay.
It's so theatrical,
It's been
isn't
a big week for Stephen Flynn. He has announced he's hoping to win the Aberdeen, Deeside and North Cardown seat in the Scottish Parliament next year. So
Which means
can you
he'd
say
have
that
to resign
slower?
as an MP.
not necessarily.
Douglas Ross was an MP and an MSP.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna double check that.
So yeah, after my Sean's texting.
I'm texting Paul O'D.
Okay, cool. I'm texting.
I had to be.
He's friends
Had to
with the
be.
boss.
Stephen Flynn has announced. God, it is going to take him so long to say the name of that constituency if he's elected to Scottish Parliament, isn't it?
Sure is. And if he is elected to Scottish Parliament, he said that he's not going to seek a dual mandate. So he would resign as an MP and as Westminster leader for the SNP.
Well, it's a lot less difficult, that job now. There are
Yeah.
so few.
I was also wondering do you think Keir Starmer perhaps felt nostalgic for Stephen Flynn being the third party leader given Davey's performance today?
Oh, he's not been like, how could you explain to William Wallace, Renton from Trainspotting, and the cast of Chewing the Fat, are we going to stand up to Trump's tariffs? What was the kind of the crux of his point, though, from the yellow man?
I think a lot of people in the SNP and also in Wales feel like there has been a double standard towards how Scunthorpe was treated by the Labour government and the kind of semi-nationalisation that they took towards that versus how places like Grangemouth and Port Talbot, even though they were kind of put into, they weren't saved under the previous government. They feel like there's been a double standard. And they know that incoming at these industries are lots of job losses. The Labour government is rebuting that by saying, well, we've got a green jobs plan and we're investing however much into these areas. But the point remains that these green jobs, the job losses are today, but the green jobs won't be for another 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm. It's a difficult needle to thread for Starmer, justifying that to an electorate. Nigh on impossible, I would say. And the SNP's kind of return from the doldrums in polling, well, certainly in the general election, has been pretty remarkable. Like, people were talking about John Swinney as the man overseeing sort of the end of the SNP's 18 years in government. And now the SNP are like leaps and bounds ahead of Labour
Well, I
in the
think
polls.
this is the thing that is I guess all the SNP MPs that did lose their seats or that didn't stand at the general election were doing that with the view in mind that they could run as MSPs, which I guess if you are in the SNP is where you want to be in Holyrood, because ultimately that's where you can contest being First Minister, which perhaps people like Stephen Flynn would quite like to do.
Yes, I think definitely. But can you have back-to-back bald men as First Minister?
We're going to find out.
I don't know. Would the country accept it? You can't go woman, bald man, bald man. Yeah, I think within the SNP, Stephen Flynn is regarded as someone with high opinions of himself.
It could be interesting if we see people like Ian Blackford or Mary Black also contest Holyrood seats, because I think there's also people that would like to be First Minister.
Yes, no, definitely.
Would Mary Black be the youngest leader of a state if she won?
What, in the UK? Or ever?
Ever.
I'm going to guess she is older than Pitt the Younger was.
Cool.
So, probably not. I get that they're probably with some parameters. That statement is probably true. Youngest woman, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, who could I guess, I don't know. Is the answer. We need to look at every single state and everyone who's ever led them. I suppose Starmer's just hoping this will all blow over by the time of, the Holyrood elections next year. It's not looking good for Labour in Wales either. It's Plaid and Reform are powering ahead, and a kind of a consequence, I guess, of the local election results is that it's almost given people permission to vote Reform if they're being hesitant. It's been like, maybe that won't be a wasted vote.
I think that's what I was going to say, is that before it looked like a vote for Reform was a vote, for the Conservatives or for Labour, but now they're actually gaining force. And the more that they continue this upward traction, the more that people are going to keep voting for them. But I wonder if in Scotland, would it be a Reform SNP contest?
I don't know. Yeah.
But I mean, in his constituency, if he's not going to be sitting in both Westminster and Holyrood, I'd imagine Reform would be quite favourable in that constituency to take the seat.
Nigel Farage is looking to visit and campaign in Scotland as May 2026 approaches.
Trying to see what were the results in Aberdeen South. The results were, who came second? Labour came second with only 150 votes more than the Conservatives. Reform came fourth, more than the Liberal Democrats. Yeah, I think Reform in Scotland is interesting. I think the challenge they need to do, or what they need to achieve, is like a Scottish Reform. I think like that's Ruth Davidson was able to kind of pilot a distinctive brand of conservatism in Scotland. And I think Scottish conservatism is quite different anyway, historically. And Ruth Davidson also made it just a bit cuddlier. Like who's the most high profile Reform politician in Scotland is probably Thomas Kerr, who's a councillor in Glasgow, hasn't been in Holyrood.
He's the only elected Reform politician in Scotland just now.
I feel maybe there's another one.
Maybe more councillors, but there's no leader of Reform in Scotland, which is an issue.
And so I wonder if, and Nigel Farage is, and don't mean this in a derogatory sense, he's very English. He's like the archetypical British English man, which maybe it wouldn't go down that well necessarily in Scotland. Not in like a sectarian sense, but just in like an I can't relate to you sense. So I wonder if it would be smart for him to recruit a particularly strong leader for the movement in Scotland. And I wonder if the yellow man will not be volunteering for that. Shall we have another clip?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, the Israeli government approved a plan to officially conquer Gaza. And just yesterday, Minister Smotrich vowed that Gaza will be entirely destroyed and that the Palestinians will have to leave in great numbers to third countries. This comes at the end of the extermination of over 50,000 Palestinian men, women and children, and something at the same time simultaneous expansion of illegal settlements in the West Bank, something I witnessed with my own eyes last week. So will now the Prime Minister finally acknowledge that ethnic cleansing is underway and to end all UK military cooperation with Israel, especially the illegal provision of F-35 fighter jet parts, or will he risk make Britain complicit in war crimes and be the Prime Minister to see Britain answer at The Hague for its role in this atrocity?
Well, Mr. Speaker, most of what he says is simply not right. But can I address? I do want to address the position in Gaza and the West Bank, because it is increasingly intolerable, and I am deeply concerned, particularly with the lack of aid that is getting in and the impact it's having on tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of individuals. That concern is something I recently reaffirmed to the Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority, where I asserted again that a two-state solution is the only viable approach for peace. And our focus is on delivering peace for Palestinians and Israelis, returning to the ceasefire, getting the hostages out, and humanitarian aid in that is desperately needed in greater number and more quickly.
What did Shockett Adams say there that is simply not right?
I've been trying to work that out as I was watching back.
Shall we take his points, like one by one?
Yep.
So, this week, the Israeli government approved a plan to officially conquer Gaza.
That's true.
Yes. And just yesterday, Minister Smotrich vowed that Gaza will be entirely destroyed.
True.
This comes at the end of the extermination of over 50,000 Palestinian men, women and children.
True.
At the same time, simultaneous expansion of illegal settlements in the West Bank.
True.
Something that he witnessed with his own eyes. That's also true. Yeah, what parts there are incorrect? Like, is so disingenuous to just lie about this. And
I think you have to disagree with the premise that he said, well, the Prime Minister finally acknowledged that there's ethnic cleansing underway.
Yeah.
So is he disagreeing with that wording?
yes, but then
Or like illegal provision of F-35 fighter jet parts, or it's hard to see what can be taken as incorrect in any of it.
I mean, the Labour government is still refusing to call what's happening a genocide and a war crime.
Yeah.
Then they are going to disagree with any question that starts with the premise Israel is committing war crimes, ethnic cleansing, or genocide. And perhaps one of the reasons they don't want to call it genocide is because then there would be an impetus because then the Labour government would have to act if they were calling it a genocide.
Yep, no, you're absolutely right. And it's just kind of makes you feel a bit sick not to engage with the meat of the question.
The longer it
there.
goes on and the longer there's reluctance. I mean, only yesterday afternoon, I think it was, the Taoiseach said that what's happening currently, like it was the first time, especially with Ireland being considered one of the more pro-Palestinian countries in Europe, was the first time that the leader of the country, well, outside of the president, the leader of the country said that Israel is committing war crimes, which now means that there's an impetus on Ireland to act properly to prevent war crimes. So there's things like, there's been the longest story in The Ditch, which is an independently owned organisation in Ireland that have been reporting on parts and weapons destined for the IDF flying through Irish airspace. Ireland being a neutral country should not be allowing that kind of military hardware to be going through airspace or stopping over to refuel or whatever. And so these things are conversations that are being had actively in Ireland now, given that there's been an acceptance and recognition of what's happening. It is terrifying to see one of the most powerful countries in Europe refusing to engage with the facts of what's happening, especially a prime minister that wants to fucking clockwork orange people into watching adolescence and hasn't said a single thing about the Louis Theroux documentary.
Yeah.
And like, if you had one question from an MP asking about the Louis Theroux documentary, I wonder how he'd respond to that. Of like, well, the same way he thinks that Adolescence is a podcast, he might think that Louis Theroux was like an anime or something. You know? Like, it's terrifying to see that level of engagement with something like this.
Yeah. I suppose it is maybe a good thing that he isn't engaging rule by television. That's the only positive thing that I can say about this. And it's the extent to which Israel has sort of forecast these plans to kind of take Gaza are like just extraordinarily well reported. If you'd simply watched the Louis Theroux documentary, they had that insane prayer circle thing at the border, and with like the map with all the proposed settlements. Was not like in the Trump team they were talking about like Trump Gaza as like a resort or something like that, like a waterfront resort. They're talking about buying waterfront property. You are being willfully ignorant. You're saying black is white at this point.
I think one of the things I find frustrating is earlier this year, back in January, I went and spoke to Sarah Champion, who's a Labour MP, and she's also the head of the International Development Committee. And I asked her, well, why aren't the Labour government calling this genocide? Like, here's all the evidence. Here's how many deaths. And she said, we can't call it genocide because that's a legal term. So it has to be ruled that by somewhere like The Hague or the ICC. But that will only happen after the fact it's happened. They're saying they can only apply the term genocide to what's happening retrospectively, which I think is some sort of strange Kafka-esque loop to be in, where you can't call what you're seeing what it is.
Well, he's Mr. Law.
Yeah.
He's obsessed with being a lawyer.
I wish he was more concerned about humanitarian law now.
Should we have a last clip?
Yeah, a little palate cleanser to close off with.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, I was talking to Jason, a pub landlord, and he told me he's heard a rumour about the Prime Minister. Not that one, not that one. He's heard that there is a reason why the Prime Minister hates Britain's pubs. Landlords like Jason are being battered by Labour's jobs tax and the slashing of small business rates relief, meaning that as many as half of Britain's pubs could be closed by 2030. Why does he hate Britain's pubs? And if he doesn't, why is he taxing them into extinction?
Mr. Speaker, nobody likes pubs better than me, and we support them. But, Mr. Speaker, it's the same old nonsense. They say they don't want the national insurance rise, but they don't have the courage to say they'd reverse it, because they know if they said that, they wouldn't be able to say where the money's coming from. That's how we got into the problem in the first place.
Nobody likes pubs more than Keir Starmer. What the hell is he talking about?
Way to save the day after the last question we watched.
Yeah, this is later, isn't it? Do we think that's true? That nobody likes pubs more than Keir Starmer?
I'd like to think I like pubs more than Keir Starmer.
It just suggests a level of work shyness that you don't want to associate with your Prime Minister. Well, he's never in cabinet because he's always in the pub. I don't know. I think like alcoholics will like the pub more than Keir Starmer.
Like famously, he has got a favourite pub
somewhere
in No, I'm not saying it to like defend him.
Right.
But why is it everything that isn't boring about him is so hard to believe? Like, see, this whole thing, Arsenal fan has been on AFTV talking about like 50, 60 years worth of Arsenal players and who he'd put in his Dream 11. I still don't believe he watches football. Like, talking about being like, he mightn't be the biggest fan of pubs.
Do you know what it is? It's like he can't talk about it normally. No. Instead of being like, I actually don't know how Keir Starmer can talk about this in a normal way. Because I was trying to suggest even like, you know me, I love a pint. That's a weird thing to say. Whatever, being like, you could just be like...
It was like when he turned around and said that his uncle fought in the Falklands out of nowhere. You're just making up family members now.
And don't make it personal.
Yeah.
Like this is how... I've made this point before. This is how we end up with the system dying. He made a promise to Esther Ranson. He needs to make a promise to Big John that he's going to save the pub. And like the local Chinese, Big John needs to take on advocacy for camera, or like Tom Skinner or something like this. Just needs to take on advocacy for pubs, engineer a meeting with the Prime Minister, make him pinky promise to do something about it, and then he does it.
Yeah.
Is that how this government works? Is that what we do? They watch a documentary, or they promise a television presenter from the 1970s they'll do something, and then we do it.
It's the funny... the assisted dying is the most mental thing that Keir Starmer has done. Not only is it like, it can be for a couple of inches in a newspaper or whatever, but to go about it in the way that they're going about it.
Just like not enough time to debate it.
There's not going to be a bed in the hospital for another like 2 weeks, but we have got the plan B.
Suicide pod. What did you make of this exchange, Laura?
It is like what Sean is saying, is for some reason it's just hard to believe. Like the thing that came to my mind was, the meme of Hacker the dog being like, we're just normal men. Just ordinary normal men.
Yeah.
Like whenever Keir Starmer is asked about his personal life, it just reminds me of that. And I think something that stands out about it is there's something quite curated about the way that Starmer talks about these things. I remember there's a really interesting lunch with the FT that they did with Keir Starmer.
Oh God, yeah.
Where rather than ordering his own breakfast.
Oh, he asked a spad, didn't he?
He asked his spad what he should order, and his spad chooses that he should have the vegetarian full English. And I just can't help thinking that his whole likes, dislikes, preferences are actually being like pulled and picked by spads.
Do you know what he lacks? He lacks the charisma of Australian prime ministers. They have there's like lots, and I'm not claiming in any way to be an expert in Australian politics, and feel free to correct me, but there are sort of like viral
Maybe
moments.
Politicians in general.
But I think specifically prime ministers. So Albanese was on like a radio phone-in show, which must have been like kind of the equivalent to Radio 1, I guess.
Yeah.
And he's asked to pick a song. And he picked a song, and it's called Am I Ever Going to See Your Face Again? It's like an Australian anthem. And the chorus goes, Am I ever going to see your face again? And as a call and response, when that's played in concerts and like at discos, the crowd goes, no way, get fucked, fuck off. And so he was doing it as like a message to like Peter Dutton, who's like the leader of the opposition, who he kicked his arse in the elections against all odds. So like what's like
he lost his seat as well, Dutton, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And so imagine like Starmer trying to do something as like authentic as that, being like, oh, what's like a memes or like a song like Come on Eileen or something like that, or like imagine being literally being like, imagine him phoning Greg James during the Euros or something like that, and be like, I'd like you to play, of course, for England.
Fantastic tunes, Greg. Keep them coming.
Harry Kane. There is an impression if you combine me and Sean's voices.
There's something dead in the middle.
But even on like beer stuff, like there was an Australian politician who was like notorious for like sculling a pint in like seconds flat. There's a great clip of, I don't know the name of them. You're finding it very quickly. I don't know these people's names. I've just seen the viral videos of
Bob Catter's very good. He wasn't a prime minister.
No,
but
the most successful politician in Australian history.
Yeah.
Most elected.
Yeah.
But the prime minister, there's a prime minister, and there's a really good clip of the leader of the opposition is like, why won't the prime minister call an election? And the prime minister goes, I want to do you slowly. It's so good. I just imagine like having like an authentic like wit to that. Like I'm not sure. I don't think things would materially get better, but there just isn't that like spark or like that.
It's like the ability to be authentic off the cuff as well.
Yes,
like everything Starmer says feels like it's been pre-written and workshopped. It's not in the moment.
So this is my last example about Australian prime ministers. You've opened a well in my mind. I've opened my own
just
well.
Keep talking about Australian prime ministers.
There's two that I've got in my mind.
Would you like to do one?
But do you know the women, and there's a guy that stands up in the Australian
Julie
Parliament. Yeah, and she's I will not be lectured by that man.
That's it. Yeah. There was a really good during COVID. There was a really good maybe it was a trend or maybe it was just one thing, but it was like people were doing like cunty in like the Hun sense. Edits to like politicians.
Yeah.
And there was this girl like putting on her makeup, like lip syncing to that, and then like 212 was on in the background. It was sick.
I think like it's like a day that like the girls in Australia will like celebrate each year that she gave that kind of response to the guy. And
it was sick.
Yeah.
It was really cool. My last one is in the 80s. Australia won the America's Cup, and I think if Britain won the America's Cup, we wouldn't care.
What sport is that?
It's sailing. Okay. It's like the two best sailing teams compete against each other. And Australia won it. And the Prime Minister went on television and said, if your boss doesn't give you a day off tomorrow, he's a bum. So, imagine Starmer. Imagine like England win the World Cup or the Euros. He's like, I think you should have a day off tomorrow because we're all so proud of the boys. He like spills. He's like Millhouse.
Yeah,
he's Millhouse.
Yeah. He wasn't in. Was it the 2020 Euros where he spent like a week demanding a bank holiday for the final. But then he was the prime minister for the last
2021
Euros?
was when the actual Euros were. Also in the end,
24 would have been August. Start of August would have been the final. So he was prime minister at the time.
he would have been.
Yeah, not a peep out of him then. Not a peep out of him for a bank holiday then.
Bloody hell, he knows that this country's economy is on its knees. And if he had done that, then India wouldn't have done this amazing trade deal.
One more Australian politics moment, please.
isn't... Oh, is it from you?
Yes.
Okay.
It isn't like a politician being full of riz, but it's Tony Abbott on the campaign trail maybe like 10 years ago when he visits an onion farm. The farmer gives him an onion and asks him to take a bite out of it. But like really, he's like earnest,
So funny.
but also deadly serious of like, I want you to eat this disgusting bitter onion. And Tony Abbott's kind of like looking at your man, the onion, his spade, and there's cameras all around. He's like, well, I guess I have. Like an apple, he starts chewing on the thing. And his face just crumbles in on itself.
That is absolutely horrendous.
Or ScoMo as well, when he's stood on the guy's front garden. And the man comes out of his house and he's like, ScoMo, get off the grass! He's like, oh, sorry, mate.
Final Australian politics moment. Do you know I think he might be in charge of a region of Australia and he's being questioned about gay marriage. And
that's Bob Catter.
Is that what I thought that was Bob Catter?
That's great.
Yeah. And he's really flustered. Everyone's entitled to their sexual proclivities. But I'm not going to spend any more time on it.
Not while.
Every day in New South Wales, someone is murdered by order.
What a country that is.
He did a fantastic Easter message. Maybe we play out the episode with Bob Catter's Easter message.
Let 1,000 blossom bloom.
I like that. Let us know if we should pivot to just talking about Australia.
Comment your favourite Australian politics moment.
I think this Australian segment is the most I've enjoyed the segment on the podcast maybe ever. So let us know. Should we all recommend something Australian? I recommend the Triple J Like a Version playlist on Spotify.
I recommend Vegemite.
Veto?
No, Vegemite's delicious.
It's not. Anyway, Laura.
I'll recommend Tim Tams.
See you like that. They're great. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You learned something, I hope, about Australian politics. Do we have Australian listeners?
We've a couple, but
Okay.
we reckon that they're English people in Australia.
Got you. Well, let us know if that was useful to you. Probably
Let
not.
us know if you are an Australian in Australia listening and an English person in Australia listening.
Let us know exactly where you are so we can sell your data to marketing agencies. Thank you so much. We'll be back tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye-bye.